my teeth look white on camera. Hi, gorefics here. We're reading gorefics because that's the name of the channel and that's what I do. What we're doing is we're looking for that one single fan fiction that makes me want to puke my guts out and makes me stop wanting to read fan fiction. Alright, now, first off, let us warn you, the content of my fan fictions that I'm going to be reading are incredibly mature. Adults, while not the target audience, are probably the only people who won't kill themselves after listening to this. So, we are going to read Rarity's Dinner by Dingo Dango. But keep in mind, not all the fanfictions that I read will be My Little Pony fanfictions. A lot of them might be, but, you know, I'm also going to be reading Agony and Pink and others if you suggest them. Alright, let us begin this massive quest. Rarity was hard at work at her sewing machine, carefully putting... Shit! Already off to a terrible start. Rarity was hard at work at her sewing machine, carefully pushing the fabric forward with her hoof, when there was a knock on her door. She let out a sigh, annoyed at having her concentration broken, and then put on a smile and opened the front door, where she was met by Pinkie Pie, grinning. "Oh, hello, Pinkie," Rarity said. "What can I do for—" "It's party time," Pinkie sang, not waiting for her to finish. "I'm planning the bestest, most fantastic party ever, and I want you to be there." "Oh, well, of course, darling. What's the occasion?" Duh. It's to celebrate the fact that it's going to be the most amazing, fantabulous party ever, obviously. Oh, I can't wait. It's going to be so exciting. So will I see you tonight at Sugar Cube Corner?" Whew. Rarity blinked and then looked back at her sewing machine. "Tonight? I'm sorry, Pinkie, but I can't. I've just got so much work to do, and I set aside this evening to get it all finished, though I suppose I might be able to make it later on." "Okie dokie dokie," Pinkie replied with a shrug. "I'll make sure to leave you some cake." Rarity watched Pinkie bounce away and then shut the door. She sighed, thinking about all the fun Pinkie and the other ponies would be having at the party, while she was stuck in the carousel boutique slaving away at the sewing machine. Still, she knew she had to get it done, and was not one to shirk her responsibilities. She spent the next couple of hours hard at work, occasionally swatting a hoof absent-mindedly as something darted and fluttered around her head, some insect, she assumed. It was only when it landed directly in front of her that her eyes widened and she let out a startled cry. "Oh my stars, it's one of you." Before her was a parasprite, a small, incredibly cute, but also terribly destructive critter that Rarity recognized only too well. She felt a panic rising as the parasprite chirped at her and blinked innocently. This, undoubtedly, was bad news. "Oh, no, no, no! How did you get in here? Go on, get out! Shoo!" The parasprite only stared at her, and despite herself, Rarity couldn't help but think how adorable the little thing was. "I need to get Pinkie," she thought, remembering how the pink pony had dealt with these things before. "But that would mean interrupting a party. Maybe I can deal with you myself," she said, pondering out loud. The parasprite flitted around her. First it tried to nestle in her perfectly styled mane. Rarity shook her head with disgust, and instead it flew towards her tail, brushing lightly against the lips of her labia. What am I in for here? She felt a surge of unexpected, tingling pleasure and turned her head back with shock and looked at the parasprite. It cooed gently at her, blinking its large green eyes, and then set off again, fleetingly teasing her with its wings. Rarity felt her pussy grow wet, and she felt a mixture of confusion and guilt. It was so strange having this weird critter touch her in such a way, but the strangeness and wrongness of the situation aroused her. The parasprite returned to the sensitive area, seemingly reacting to the scent of the glistening wetness which now emanated from Rarity's vulva. Oh my," Rarity said, her breathing growing shorter and shallower as the parasprite continued to pleasure her. More! The critter seemed to understand Rarity's demands, and it grew more frenzied in its flying, now rubbing quite vigorously, sending tumults of delight through Rarity, causing her to moan and shiver with ecstasy. Yes, The unicorn cried as the parasprite entered her vulva again and withdrew. "I want you right inside me," she gasped. "Crawl inside me. Let me consume you." The parasprite acquiesced, creeping into her vagina until it was entirely inside. Rarity could feel it buzzing and fluttering deep inside of her as it penetrated deep into her vagina. She writhed, enjoying the most bizarre feeling immensely. "Enough, enough," she gasped eventually, as the pleasure began to turn to a slight discomfort. "Come out now." But the parasprite did not respond this time, and it felt to Rarity as if it was crawling deeper inside of her. The feeling was now entirely distressing, and Rarity tried to strain her back end and force it out, but to no avail. She then felt a pain deep in her gut, as if something was stabbing her from the inside. A moment later, consumed with an ever-growing pain, she realized that what was happening. Parasprites were always hungry, and it was feasting on her insides. "Oh, no, no, come on, get out now," she pleaded, as the parasprite continued to eat, tearing her insides to shreds. She collapsed to the floor. A few seconds later, the parasprite burst from her chest like an alien, sending blood and viscera flying all over the floor and the walls of Carousel Boutique. The critter began to gorge on the glistening innards now openly on display, gulping down Rarity's stomach and kidneys and liver with relish. It delved back into her, and what little life was left was fading fast. As the parasprite began to chew on her intestines, Rarity blacked out, never to regain consciousness. A few hours had passed when there was another knock on the door of Carousel Boutique. There was no response. "Rarity, Pinky sent me over to see if you had finished." It was Spike. He waited a moment and then tried again. "Rarity, are you in there?" The dragon thought a moment and then entered Rarity's house through the cat flap, and was entirely unprepared for the sight that he beheld. Rarity was barely recognizable, just a hollowed-out shell of skin and bones. As the smell of blood and muscle hit his nostrils, he took a step back and vomited. He held his breath and edged towards her, hardly able to believe his eyes or his nose. There was a gaping wound in Rarity's belly. Her eyes were open and staring lifelessly into space. As he came nearer, he noticed an odd smell intermingled with the strong smell of flesh, one that set his scales on end. As he looked at Rarity's corpse, his eyes fell towards her pussy, still wet from the orgasm the parasprite had given her. And he felt a strange arousal within him and a dark thought. No one would ever know. His small... Oh, come on, Spike. No, 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 no. His small red penis had grown erect, and for a couple of moments he stood, uncertain of whither he should proceed. He knew it was wrong, but he had desired Rarity for such a long time, and this would now be the only chance he would get to finally realize his fantasies. Of course, Rarity being dead and torn open wasn't ideal, but Spike reasoned it was this or nothing. He positioned himself and gingerly slid his penis inside of Rarity's cold, slippery pussy. As he began to thrust back and forth, he closed his eyes, imagining that the cold, unresponsive unicorn before him was alive, bucking and responding to his cock. He opened his eyes, suddenly feeling ashamed, and sped up his pounding, eager to come, so he could get out of there and pretend that this never happened. However, just as he was about to climax, he saw a flicker of movement within Rarity's corpse. He shook his head, thinking it was just imagining things, but then there was the most terrible pain in his nether regions. The feeling of sharp teeth and powerful jaws crunching down agonizingly on his member. He let out a piercing screech and pulled away from the corpse. His penis was gone, replaced by streams of blood pouring from where it should have been. He gasped as the blood splattered onto the floor, and before him fluttered the parasprite. Spike fell down, feeling ever weaker and more nauseous, until the profuse blood loss was too much for the little dragon to bear, and he died. Alright, I'm going to give that a 7 out of 10 for detail. Actually, I'm going to give it +1 because he used the word acquiesced, which is awesome. 7 out of 10 on the gore factor. I have definitely seen worse. However, this was a bit unbearable to read, especially after reading the part where Spike got his dick bitten off. That hit me right here. I do have a penis, but that would hurt like a bitch. So yeah, if this video actually gets enough views for people to start leaving comments, please tell me what gorefic you would like me to read next. If I don't get any suggestions that I like, however, I will be reading Agony and Pink. So look out for that. And I love you guys.
Bye-bye. How you doing? Have a fun day.